Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, I'll continue bringing you the next chapter in the story of Hoai Ca and Officer Hung, a journey filled with tears, love, and wounds that have yet to heal. As you all know, Hung's mother, the woman who once abandoned her family and left behind so much pain, has suddenly returned. But the big question is, has she truly changed, or is she still carrying her old schemes? And what about Hoai Ca, the woman who once suffered deeply because of her? How will she react when that woman shows up once again? And Hung, torn between love and filial duty, what choice will he make? Stay tuned for today's full video to uncover the truth behind this unexpected return. And don't forget to leave a comment letting me know what you think Hung's mother has really come back for. That afternoon, dark clouds gathered, covering the sky as if trying to swallow the last light of the day. The wind rose, carrying a damp chill that swept through the bamboo trees at the village gate, making the leaves rustle against each other, a sound as sorrowful as the earth sighed before a coming storm. Mrs. Ha hunched over, carrying a basket of vegetables, her steps heavy on the muddy path after the market. The scent of wet soil, dried fish, and the faint smell of rain in the air blended together, creating that familiar humid warmth of late autumn afternoons in the countryside. Her blouse was still damp, a few droplets of drizzle clinging to her shoulder, slowly seeping into her skin. As she reached the gate, she froze. Beneath the plum tree in the yard stood a middle-aged woman, motionless, as if she had been waiting there for a long time. Her faded gray coat was stained with mud, and in her hand was a worn cloth bag, gripped so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Her hair was tied up in a bun, a few silver strands loose across her forehead. The face was thin, almost haggard, yet her eyes shone with a strange light, the light of someone who had lived, erred, and was now desperately trying to reclaim something long lost. For a brief moment, time seemed to stop for Mrs. Ha. That face was familiar, yet so distant it sent a chill through her spine. Her voice came out hoarse but firm, each word carrying a trace of caution. "You're here again? I told you before, Hoai Ca and Tony aren't home." She set the basket down and wiped the sweat from her brow. Her gaze was cold but steady, as if she were trying to hold the fragile boundary between the past and the present. The other woman pressed her lips together, clutching the strap of her bag tighter. Her voice trembled slightly, yet her eyes held a strange determination. "I just want to see them. I'm Hung's mother." Those 4 words, Hung's mother, echoed through the quiet air, leaving Mrs. Ha frozen in place. Her hands shook as she grasped the basket handle, clinging to it as if it were the only thing keeping her steady. At that moment, the rain began to fall, heavy drops striking the tin roof, breaking into a cold, urgent rhythm. The wind howled through the yard, carrying the scent of wet earth and the distant rumble of thunder. Mrs. Ha stared at the woman for a long time, her eyes wary, cold, yet unable to hide the trace of sorrow buried deep inside. Her voice broke the heavy silence, calm but laced with bitterness, each word echoing in the damp air. "Hung's mother? The one who left her son behind with a mountain of debt, forced him to run around paying it off until he was exhausted, until he lost all faith in family?" The wind swept in from the porch, carrying the chill of rain that stung her face. Mrs. Hung shivered slightly, her trembling hands pulling the thin shawl tighter across her chest. Her eyes lowered, avoiding the stern gaze of Mrs. Ha. Her voice quivered, soft and fragmented, as if afraid her own words might shatter the air. I know I was wrong. All these years, I've lived like a ghost. I just want to buy back that house, the place my son once called home. I only want to make things right, to repay him, and all the pain I've caused." Mrs. Ha clenched her hands tightly, her nails digging into her palms without realizing. A fleeting look of pity flickered in her eyes, but it vanished quickly, replaced by a voice cold and sharp as steel. "Make things right?" she cut in, lips pressed tightly together. "If you were truly sincere, you wouldn't have left him to bear everything alone. I've seen him running in the sun and the rain, struggling to pay off the debts you created. And Hoai Ca, do you even know how many times she collapsed from exhaustion? Now you return, say a few remorseful words, and think that's enough? No. All you're doing is tearing their wounds open again." Inside the small house, the air grew thick and heavy. The ticking of the clock was painfully clear, blending with the pounding of rain on the tin roof. The smell of wet earth, the breath of storm, and the tension between two women filled the room like a suffocating fog. Mrs. Hung stood motionless. Her hands trembled as she clutched the frayed edge of her old bag, as if it were the only thing keeping her composed. Her eyelids fluttered, tears welled up, but she fought to hold them back. When she finally spoke, her voice was faint and broken, trembling between sobs. I just want to see him, even once. I won't say anything. I just want to see my son, in the flesh, alive, then I'll go. Just once, I beg you." Mrs. Ha bent down to pick up the basket she had dropped, her hands slightly shaking. A long, weary sigh escaped her lips, heavy enough to fill the entire room. Her voice softened, but it still carried the firmness of someone who had known too much pain. "If you're truly sincere, let me talk to Hung first. Don't go to Hoai Ca again, she's suffered enough, both in body and spirit. Don't touch a wound that hasn't healed yet. Sometimes, the only way left to love someone, is to know when to walk away." Mrs. Hung stood silently. Outside, the rain poured down in thick sheets, hammering against the tiles, splashing and streaming across the ground. A flash of lightning illuminated her face, lined with wrinkles, eyes red and glistening. She nodded slightly, said nothing more, and turned away. Her frail figure slowly disappeared into the cold curtain of rain. Mrs. Ha stood watching, her eyes deep and distant. That figure, pitiful yet infuriating, faded into the storm, leaving behind a heaviness she couldn't name. The door closed softly, the faint click echoing through the damp air, sealing off a stormy afternoon. Where the past and present had collided in silence, leaving behind a wound that would take a long time to heal. At the provincial hospital, the afternoon sunlight faded into a pale, tired glow. Through the window, thin rays filtered past the white curtains, casting trembling shadows of tree branches onto the cold tiled floor. Inside the small room, only two figures remained, a mother and her child. Hoai Ca sat beside the bed, carefully stirring a bowl of porridge, gently lifting each spoonful to Tony's lips. The soft clink of the spoon against porcelain blended with the steady beeping of the heart monitor. Tony looked up with his innocent, bright eyes, eating each bite without knowing the heavy thoughts clouding his mother's heart. Every weak breath of her son was her hope, her lifeline through the darkest days. Suddenly, the phone on the table vibrated. The quiet sound startled her slightly. On the screen appeared two words, Koha. She quickly wiped her hands on a towel and answered the call. A familiar yet trembling voice came through the line. "Dear, today I met Hung's mother. She came to the house, said she wanted to see you." A long silence followed. The spoon slipped from Hoai Ca's hand, clattering softly against the table, yet loud enough to stop time itself. Her eyes dimmed, her lips parted, but it took her a moment to find her voice. "She came looking for me," she whispered, her tone hoarse, a mix of shock, fear, and old memories. Mrs. Ha's voice was steady but heavy, recounting every detail, from the moment Hung's mother appeared at the gate, to the guilt in her eyes, and the late apologies that came too easily. Hoai Ca said nothing. Her gaze drifted far away, while her foster mother's voice echoed through her mind like an old, painful melody. Each word struck deep, pulling her back to the memories she had tried so hard to bury. The evening light stretched across the floor, painting her face in a faint golden hue. After a long pause, Hoai Ca finally spoke, her voice trembling yet calm. "Don't worry, Mom, she probably just wanted to check on things. I'm fine." But when the call ended, her hands were still trembling uncontrollably. She set the phone down, took a deep breath, but her breathing came fast and uneven, like someone who had just run a long way. Her vision blurred, everything around her melted into a hazy blur. Then the memories came rushing back, swift, sharp, and agonizing. The image of that cold, expressionless woman. The scorn in her voice. "You're not worthy of my son." The night she was thrown out of the house in the rain, clutching her pregnant belly with nowhere to go. The endless nights curled up in a damp rented room, listening to the rain hammer against the window, her heart trembling at every sound outside. And worst of all, the moment she discovered that the very same woman had hired people to follow her, to force her away from Hung forever. That nightmare, she thought she had survived it. But just hearing that name was enough to bring everything back, vivid and raw as if it had happened yesterday. Hoai Ca clutched her head, eyes squeezed shut. Her breathing grew ragged, her heart pounded painfully in her chest. She tried to steady herself, but that face, that cold stare, that faint smirk, lingered in her mind, reopening wounds she thought had healed. Then a small voice called out. "Mom, what's wrong?" Tony's innocent tone pulled her back to the present. She looked down, forcing a smile despite her trembling lips. "It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy's just a little tired." She gently stroked his hair and pressed a soft kiss to his forehead. In her eyes, there was a storm, but also the unyielding strength of a mother. She knew that no matter what the past brought back, no matter what that woman tried to do, she would never let anyone hurt her and her son again. Outside, the rain began to fall, pattering softly against the window as the curtains swayed in the wind. And in that quiet room, Hoai Ca sat still, her gaze distant, as if staring through the rain, straight into the heart of the pain that had come back to haunt her once more. That night, in the dimly lit office where only a yellow desk lamp glowed over piles of stacked documents, Hung sat in silence, staring out the window. The drizzle continued to fall, tracing long streaks down the glass, reflecting his weary face, half in light, half in shadow. The phone rang. It was Mrs. Ha. He answered, and her hesitant, somber voice came through. "Hung, your mother came to the house today. She stood outside the gate, said she wanted to see you and Hoai Ca. But when she learned you were away on business, she quietly left." He froze. A long silence filled the line, only the sound of rain and his heavy breathing could be heard. When he finally spoke, his voice was hoarse, almost trembling. "She really came back?" Mrs. Ha sighed softly, her tone tinged with sadness. "Yes. But I don't think she's ready to face you yet. When I saw her, I felt pity, but also confusion. Hung, I don't know what she's come back for this time." Hearing that, Hung tightened his grip on the phone. He closed his eyes as a rush of emotions overwhelmed him, anger, sorrow, helplessness. The word mother, once sacred to him, now carried only heaviness, a tangled knot of love and resentment. After ending the call, he sat still for a long while at his desk. The light shone down on the papers, but his eyes no longer saw them. In his mind echoed Mrs. Ha's words, interwoven with memories of that cold day when his mother had walked away, leaving everything behind in ruins. He exhaled slowly, leaned back in his chair, then reached for his phone again. His voice was low, filled with unease. Hey, listen to me. On the other end, Hoai Ca's soft voice replied, barely above a whisper. Yes, I'm here. Stay at the hospital with Tony. Rent a room nearby for now. Don't come home yet. I just have a bad feeling. In that moment, the distance between them felt longer than ever, stretched by invisible fear and worry. Hoai Ca clutched her phone, her gaze fixed on the rain sliding endlessly down the windowpane. Her voice trembled, caught between her throat and her heart. I understand. Don't worry. I'll be careful. She knew he wasn't just worried for her safety, he was afraid for her heart. Afraid that if she saw that woman again, even once, the scars she'd fought so hard to heal would split open all over. When the call ended, Hung sat motionless. He glanced at a photo on his desk, the three of them, taken on an autumn morning, him, Hoai Ca, and little Tony smiling beneath a golden sky. His eyes softened, yet a wave of emotion churned within him, sorrow, guilt, longing. Outside, the rain grew heavier, beating hard against the glass. The wind whistled through the cracks, echoing his heart, aching, conflicted, praying silently. That this time, the past would stay buried, and not return to shatter the fragile piece of the home he had fought so hard to protect. That same night, as the clock's hands crept past midnight, the dim yellow light from the desk lamp cast a faint glow over piles of paperwork. Files, pens, reports, the radio, everything seemed to silently watch their owner, the quiet man sitting there, elbow on the desk, eyes lost in a distant void. Hung removed his glasses and rubbed his temples. After a long day of work, his mind was still entangled in thoughts of Hoai Ca and his mother. Outside, the rain kept tapping gently on the tin roof, the cold wind slipping through the cracks, brushing against his skin with a damp chill. The silence was so deep that only the ticking of the clock could be heard, marking the slow passing of another sleepless day. Suddenly, his phone rang, cutting through the stillness. He glanced at the screen, Tieu San. A familiar name, though one he hadn't heard in a long time. His foster sister, the one his mother had once cared for as her own child. He hesitated for a few seconds before answering. Her voice drifted through the line, soft yet hesitant. On Hung. Mom came to see me. His fingers froze against the desk. A brief silence followed, filled only by the patter of rain against the glass. Tieu San took a deep breath before continuing, her voice trembling. She apologized. She said she wanted me to help her reconcile with you and Hoai Ca. She said, she doesn't want to carry this regret to the end of her life. Hung sat quietly, his gaze fixed on the window, where rain streaks crossed and tangled like a web, reflecting the flickering glow of the streetlights outside. He didn't answer immediately. Leaning back in his chair, he clasped his hands over his chest, and old memories began to flood in. The image of the woman who had raised him with love. And with the same hands, had pushed him away, leaving behind a wound that time could never erase. On the other end, Tieu San's voice cracked with emotion. Brother. I think she really regrets it this time. I've never seen her like that, crying, trembling, and repeating your name, and Hoai Ca's. She said she just wants to see you once more, even if no one forgives her, just once, so she can feel at peace. The air grew heavier. Hung tilted his head slightly, taking a deep breath, his eyes red without realizing. He spoke softly, his voice low and heavy, more to himself than to her. I don't hate her, San. But I don't know if I can forgive her either. She worked hard to raise us, she was the person I respected most. But the mistake she made back then was too big. Some things time can't wash away, it only buries them deeper, to make them hurt longer. He paused for a moment before continuing, his voice hoarse with sorrow. And Hoai Ca. I don't want her to face Mom again. I'll respect her choice. If she chooses silence, I'll stay silent with her. She might be my mother, but Hoai Ca is the one who was hurt the most. On the other end, Tieu San said nothing. Only the sound of rain trickled through the receiver, blending with their heavy breaths. On one side, a mother's late remorse. On the other, a son's torment, unable to hate, yet unable to forget. Outside, the wind howled through the cracks, swaying the curtain gently. Raindrops clung to the glass, merging into long, blurred streaks. Hung sat still for a long time, his gaze distant, his thoughts tangled like threads in the dark. In the faint yellow light, his face glowed with a quiet loneliness. Not the loneliness of a man working late, but of someone standing between two worlds, duty and love, past and present. The sound of rain mixed with his deep sigh, falling softly into the heavy silence. Slow, steady, like a sorrowful melody with no end. Stay tuned for the next episode. Has Hung's mother truly changed? After years of leaving everything behind, carrying both guilt and resentment, she has returned with a late apology. But is it enough to heal the wounds she once caused? And Hoai Ca, the woman who endured so much pain, who was once cast out of the very home she called her own. How will she face the return of the woman who brought her so much suffering, now standing before her in tears, begging for forgiveness? As for Hung, torn between love and duty, anger and compassion. What will he do when the mother he thought was gone forever suddenly wants to step back into his life? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe this return is an act of true remorse, or just another scheme hidden behind tears?
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình đang hoàn thành video. Hồi nãy mình kẹp cái tóc lên, xong bây giờ thả xuống nó bị xù lên chỗ. Hiện tại thì mình vừa mới làm xong video của Hoai Ca và Hùng. Bây giờ thì mình sắp đi quay một video 1 phút nối đuôi này nữa thì mình sẽ nối vào và mình hoàn thành và mình sẽ xuất video rồi đăng tải lên. Hiện tại thì mình chưa đặt được tên cho video. Mong rằng mọi người sẽ ủng hộ cho kênh mình nhiều hơn. Cảm ơn mọi người rất là nhiều. Tạm biệt mọi người.